Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where we speak about the sports industry, analysis, employment, and we also chat to people in cool jobs within the sector. As you can tell from the video title, this is another industry chat video, and this time is a very interesting guest in Andy Parslow. Andy has a strong coaching background with a blend of analysis too, and is currently first team set piece coach at AFC Wimbledon. I'm excited to chat to Andy about how he got in the position he is in now, but also what he does on a day-to-day basis. The set piece coach or analyst was a role that I briefly touched upon in a previous video, and so it's great to have Andy on to ask him some of my questions, but also put some questions forward to him that some of the viewers have sent in to me. If you do want to see more videos like this, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and give the video a like if you find it useful. Without further ado, let's get into the chat with Andy. Hello Andy, welcome to the channel, mate. How are you doing? You okay?
I'm very well, thanks, Chris. How are you?
Good, yeah, I'm really good. Again, I appreciate your time in jumping on this. Like I kind of mentioned, I'm interested to speak to people in all different sorts of roles within sport and football. Obviously, that is my main sport, and obviously you being kind of a set piece coach, you know, I kind of figured it was a very interesting conversation to have. So I'm keen to learn more about what you do, and I'm sure obviously some of the people that are watching this as well will also be keen. So if we just want to start, Andy, just to give a brief introduction. So before I kind of give an introduction earlier in terms of who we've got coming on, but you'll probably do it a little bit better than me. So just in terms of who you are, what you currently do, and just a brief overview of kind of how you got to that position, really.
Sure. So I'm Andy Parslow. My current role is first team set piece coach at AFC Wimbledon. It's a role that I've held since February 2021 when Mark Robinson was put in interim charge and brought me up from the academy. I was coaching the under 14s at the time, brought me up into the first team fold. Before that, I've been in various roles in academies. So obviously at Wimbledon, but before that at Watford and at Brentford. And then going back a little bit further, I did a spell at Wickham in their development centre. I had a year-long internship at Luton Town as a first team analyst. That was the year after I graduated from university, where I studied sports science, and I just started sort of my coaching journey then in grassroots and sort of just getting around as many sort of teams and players as I could at the time to practice.
Yeah, perfect. You briefly mentioned it there in terms of your short stint as an analyst, and I've got your LinkedIn profile up actually, and what made me laugh was you made DVD. It was about DVDs, like the back in the day, that's what it was. So yeah, any younger people that are watching, you know, we did have to kind of produce DVDs for the game and send DVDs to players and coaches and stuff. So a lot of times have changed since then. So that was kind of right after uni, but you kind of admitted yourself you are predominantly a coach, aren't you? That is your main background. So
yeah, I'm a coach. The season as an analyst was an opportunity to work in first team football. I always knew I wanted to be a coach. And I saw that as a way of, without having a playing background, of getting access to first team training, first team matches, first team players, and learning more about essentially how it works, what sort of details provided, what training looks like. I was 21 at the time, I think 22 at the time. So similar age to a lot of the players, younger than a lot of the players, but it just allowed me to, just to learn and grow without it being sort of my head on the and what they're called, yeah,
no, definitely. So even then, so you're saying even when you were doing that analyst position, you were focused on being a coach. So had you already started your coaching badges and stuff back then, or were you already kind of working towards that career?
Yeah, so I completed my level 1 before I went to university. I completed my level 2 when I was at university, and then, to be honest, I sort of saw the opportunity with Luton towards the back end of my third year at uni. It's the year I was graduating, and it was basically follow that, and it was an unpaid internship, or go into teaching in schools, PE teaching, which I'd been doing part-time during university as well, which is fine. And basically I looked at the unpaid internship and I just thought, there are X amount of people in my year at my university that want to go into football coaching. Then there's every other university in the country that does the same course, then in Europe and the world, that all want to get into this. So I'm going to have to do something different that other people won't be willing to do. And I just saw that as an opportunity, just to try, really, just to see if I didn't know if I was going to be anywhere near qualified enough. I knew I could put together a half decent sort of application. And yeah, it worked out that I got onto that, and I sort of was able to use that sort of platform as that then to get onto my B license. So I got onto my B license at 21. which is reasonable. I was the youngest, if not one of the youngest on the course, I think. But again, when I saw the internship opportunity, I thought that might be another thing that can boost that B license application further down the line. Which thankfully it did.
Yeah, no, you took a couple of points you mentioned, which are quite hot topics on the channel in terms of other videos, like unpaid. It seems like a lot of things even now are still unpaid in terms of analysis. I don't know what it's like in coaching and stuff, but in terms of analysis, that is still a thing. I'm curious, where were Luton at the time? What league were Luton in back then?
In the conference, they were one of the bigger teams in the conference. Good resources for a conference side. It was the season before they got promoted. We had a poor season. We finished I think 11th or 10th or something like that. Got to the 5th round of the FA Cup, so we had little spells here and there. But no, the conference side, but with good resources. And it's a hotly contested debate. I think like my parents as well were unsure about me taking it because it was unpaid, but obviously supported me nonetheless in terms of doing it. But like I said, it was a way to separate myself from everyone else. And the way I looked at it is I could take a stand and say, no, if you're not paying me, then I'm not going to do it. And they'll go, okay, we'll pick someone else. There will always be someone willing to do it. So I basically said, well, I'll be the person that's willing to do it and I'll get the experience. It doesn't make it right. But it was of assistance to me in terms of my journey, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that is very important actually, because I have spoke about that before in terms of if you go, like you probably are going to have to do an internship if you're going to want to be an analyst, for example, which people will probably know by now if they're watching this. But I think if you're going to go into it with the mindset like you have of, look, like it is unpaid, it's not ideal, but these skills are going to literally get me that I want to be a coach and this is going to help me. So it's almost like being a bit more selfish and thinking, well, it's a good opportunity for me to take and it's going to help me be where I want to be. As long as you kind of do it that way rather than just kind of keep doing the same thing unpaid and unpaid all the time, you're obviously not
100%,
get anything out of it. So it's just a waste of your time. So so in terms of your coaching, sort of the clubs that you were at coaching then, Andy, would you say your majority, in fact, was Wimbledon the first step to the first team of coaching first team?
Coaching, it was, first,
Okay, cool. So were you, when you were in the academies, what kind of ages were you doing? Were you doing the really young ones or did you kind of work your way up? Or how did that?
I did everything, to be fair. So my first academy was Brentford. I was very naive in terms of how I approached it. So I don't know where I got this from, but I had it in my head. To get into an academy, you had to have your B license, you had to have your FA Youth Award just to get in the door. So I didn't approach anyone on that. I was, as I said, with Wickham doing their development centre and elite centre. I was working with Curva coaching at the time as well. And it was just doing as much as I could with older age groups to get my B license, get my youth award, get over the line. Then I could look at academy. So I contacted a few. Brentford were one that got back to me. I went in there. Then I found out there were people that were on their B license, people that were doing the youth award. I thought, I could have got into this maybe a year or two ago. So that was a learning experience. Is if you don't ask, you don't get. So I could have tried in the worst case scenario. They'd have said, no, you're not ready yet. Okay, cool. I'll go and do what I need to do. But got in the door there, and I wasn't assigned an age group. I was just another coach that they brought in. So on a Thursday night, I'll be working with the under 15s and under 16s doing position specific. And then on a Thursday night or a Wednesday night or whatever, I'm with the under 7s doing futsal. So there's so many different experiences working with different coaches. And really at Brentford, they wanted every coach to know every player, regardless. So each double age group had a head coach and they had assistants around that, but you'd move between phases and between groups as well. So when it came to retain and release, everyone's got a good grounding on what each player's like. You get more opinions. So it stops sort of one person basing the decision on just how they feel. You get a broader range, which I felt was quite an effective way. Then I went to Watford because the season I joined Brentford was the season that they then chose to shut the academy down at the end of the year, which is a shame because the level of players and staff as well we had was an incredible level. So they lost 1 or 2 to your Man City's, Man United's, but we had so much more coming through, and some of them are starting to come into. So one of them's on the bench for Man City fairly regularly. You've got others coming through at Fulham, at Arsenal. We had an incredible level of player there. But anyway, did what they did, shut it down. Went to Watford and was the under 9s assistant for a season, which, to be honest, my personality is better suited to older players. Having said that, mentioned earlier about teaching PE and doing that on the side during uni, I continued that I continued that during my internship with Luton once a week because I wanted to keep my foot in the door. And then after I finished with Luton, when I was doing the development centre and academy bits here and there, I still needed a full-time role. So I was teaching PE 5 days a week, and then in the evenings going off to my academies and other places like that. So under-9s assistant for a season at Watford, next season under 11s head coach, following season under 13s, 14s. They mixed they sort of doubled the age groups up. So under 13s, 14s head coach. Then I left Watford after that season, went to Wimbledon, under 13s head coach, following season under 14s head coach, but also helping out with the under 18s fairly regularly as well.
Yeah, nice. And to be fair, you said there you think that you're suited more to the older player, but I mean, especially in like a League One team, you can have, your first team could be a 16, 17-year-old, it could be like a 38-year-old, couldn't it? Like there is a big gap in terms of who you're working with. So yeah, I think kind of being adaptable and having the experiences of working with the young and the older is really good. So to be fair, I didn't actually have it down as a topic to speak about, but it kind of came up there in terms of, the whole situation with Brentford kind of closing their academy. I'm just curious to get your opinion on it. Like because again, it's obviously situational to the club and their kind of area and location and how they feel. And obviously it costs a lot of money to run an academy. I mean, what's your overall opinion on that? I mean, were you kind of surprised at the close academy? Is it like, do you think it's a good route for them to go down? Or
I think you need to look at where they are now. Yeah. And you'd have to say, fair enough. Like fair play. You've made your decision. Ultimately, you got where you wanted to get to. Yeah, you can't argue against it. Didn't like it at the time, but obviously it was personal to me because I was working there and effectively being told, "No, you're off." But as I said, we had a for the size of the club Brentford were. I think they were in the Championship at the time. But again, this goes into the reasons as to why they shut it down. Probably the smallest club other than Barnet, I guess, in London. Yeah. They couldn't compete with the other teams, and it did make sense. But we had an exceptional level of player in there, and the environment that we had as staff, well, throughout for players and staff, is like nothing I've ever experienced before. It was as elite as you can get. It was honestly phenomenal, and I think it goes to show. I think there's 3, maybe 4 of us that were coaching in that academy there that are now working at first team level. What is it? 6 years? Yeah, 5, 6 years later. That is just the level that we had at the time. So like I said, I can't disagree with the decision because it did work out. It did work out for Brentford. Didn't like it at the time, and I wonder what would have happened if they'd stuck with it for another 4 years. Because, as I said, the players coming through, maybe they would have lost them to the bigger, more financially resourced clubs. I don't know. Like hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it's probably worked out for both parties in the end. So
yeah, definitely. No, it was always an interesting one. It was quite a surprise when it first happened, but I think you can obviously understand the reasons of doing it, like we've said, about competing and financial and stuff like that. So so you mentioned you were at the academy with Wimbledon, then you kind of got that kind of step up to, so you mentioned that was kind of 2021, February 21. Is that when you kind of got pulled up from one of the age groups in terms of, so what were you doing with the first team at that point then? Because that wasn't straight to set piece coach, was it? That was...
Yeah, it was straight into set piece coach. Well, actually, to be fair, in the season that I joined, so 2019, I think it was, 2019, 2020 season, I developed a bit of a reputation fairly early on tactically. So I also do, or still do, analysis for the Coach's Voice, who media company that I'm sure a lot of people will know on social media. So I do a lot of their tactical analysis on matches, and I just developed a bit of a reputation at the club as well for tactical knowledge and understanding, to the point where the first team started sending me to watch opposition games and providing reports back to them on strengths, weaknesses, key players, how to exploit them, how to stop them. I did 2, and I was quite pleased with both games that I did, which for AFC Wimbledon League One was quite rare. So that sort of enhanced my reputation a bit more. And so I had sort of dealings with the first team, and it was during that season, so my first season, when Mark Robinson, who I've got to give credit to for coming up with the idea of set piece coach for me, because it wasn't my idea. My age group had also done quite well from set pieces. We'd been quite bright and quite clever, and we'd scored a lot of goals. It's only like under 13s, under 14s football, but I've always thought it's part of the game. Why don't we coach it more with players in sort of youth development phase? And he just sort of put the idea to me. Robbo was working as a first team coach at the time, but still had a major hand in the academy as well. And he just said, yeah, this is sort of what I'm thinking. Have you thought about doing that? And obviously a lot of people go into coaching, working with kids and younger players, but really with the aspiration to one day move to senior football. So I thought, if I'm being offered this opportunity, I'm not going to say no. So yeah, 100%. I've never been a set piece coach before. Don't really know how I'm going to do it, but I'll figure it out, I guess. So it was sort of put to the first team manager at the time, Glenn Hodges, who was interested but didn't really want to relinquish control on that at that point, because ultimately the team is always in a relegation scrap in League One. Can't compete with the bigger sides. Set pieces are a massive part of the game, particularly in League One or the Football League in general, I guess. Is he really going to give control to an untested youth coach, basically, who's at the time I would have been 29 years old? It's a big ask for someone to do that with someone that they don't know, just on the say so of someone else, because he happened to do all right in the academy. It would have been a bit of a risk. So didn't happen at the time. Lockdown hit, and I thought, I'm gonna make a go of this. We've all got a ridiculous amount of time on our hands now. Let's just do some research. So I just studied every corner and free kick for every team, for and against in League One, worked out various statistics, worked out what I'd do for Wimbledon, etc. Put it all together in a presentation, presented it to Glenn, who was still the manager at the time, who was more interested now because he could see, he understood it more. Like, there was just more of a buy-in. But the issue is, it was lockdown. There were no fans in stadium. Well, there's no football at the time, but then there was no fans in stadiums. Clubs weren't looking to bring staff in. They were looking to get rid of staff. So again, trying to find money for another coach was a big ask. So didn't happen then either. About 6 months later, roughly, Feb 2021, Glyn lost his job and Robbo was given the job. And Robbo called me straight away and said, fancy coming in. Money was not good at all, but it's a case of, similar to the Luton example, really. Am I really going to say no to this? No, I'm not going to say no to this opportunity. If I do this well enough, further down the line, better financial reward will come. So we'll go into it, and it was basically, I got the call on the Sunday and was starting on the Monday. Straight into it. First job in first team football, and sort of off you go, straight into a relegation battle.
Yeah, nice. So it obviously shows like persistence in terms of, obviously you didn't get the job a couple of times, and you probably wanted it, and obviously putting the time in your own time, like actually doing that research and putting together all the stuff that you did, and that kind of sparked the interest even more. So I will say, if anyone, obviously people that are watching, connect with Andy on LinkedIn. He does follow him. He does put some stuff out, and he has put some stuff out recently in terms of like a review of the season in League One, and it is really interesting. I know you said, it's quite rare. Not many clubs, especially in League One, have a set piece coach. Yet there's like teams that rely on it for like 30-40% of their goals, and they don't even have a coach specific to that area, which is, honestly, it's just quite mad, really, if you think of this. It has that much of an effect on day-to-day games. And when a game can literally be decided by one goal, and that can come from a set play, then why are you not spending more time on actually mastering that? So but yeah, I'm sure you agree with that. So
it's not even so much time spent on it, it's more depth. So the amount of time we spend coaching set pieces probably isn't a significant, and when I say coaching, I mean on the grass, significant amount more than other teams do. But the depth in which we go to away from the grass, and I guess more off the pitch coaching happens. For me, this is probably where the difference is made, and it's having that, I guess, member of staff that can dedicate that time, because it's his or her job to go into that depth, to have those conversations with those players, because manager, assistant manager, first team coach, they've got plenty of other stuff to be focusing on as well. Having a dedicated person to do this is definitely beneficial. You talk about percentage of goals. So 36% of our goals this season came from set pieces, which is a huge increase on what it used to be. I mean, before we had a set piece coach at Wimbledon, so in the lockdown season, finished 23rd out of 23 teams in League One. That's because Bury got expelled that year. 23rd out of 23 teams in League One for goals scored from set pieces. 7 months later, we were first in the country for goals from set pieces because we spend more time focusing on the depth that we need to go into to try and make the difference. So it's really important. Like,
yeah, definitely. Because I mean, in my previous roles, I mean, I've kind of done analysis jobs in different clubs, and one of the roles that I've taken in various clubs was to obviously look at the opposition set plays before the game. But it seemed like there was more of a disconnect between the analysts. So like we'd be looking at basically how the opposition are going to attack corners, for example. So but then as the analysts, we didn't really spend much time on how we're going to attack, well, what we're going to do with our corners. That was left more to just the coaching staff, and there was a bit of a disconnect, which I felt that could have been a lot better. But I know every club is different, but I think it was more a case of like, how do these attack corners, and then let's try and combat that, but not really, well, how are we going to make the most of our corners as well? How are we going to make the most of our set plays? So in terms of like, so obviously corners, attacking free kicks, do you do any like long throws as well? I presume you're looking at as well. So yeah, there's obviously quite a lot of different. And one question I did note down actually that I want to actually, and again, this might be different between different set piece coaches. I mean, when do you classify a set piece as ending? You know, like if it's a corner and it's in a second phase or whatever, and they score from that, are you qualifying that as a set piece goal if it's half cleared and comes back in? Or
I think I do personally. I do for and against. I put a post about this a few months ago around second phases. For me, it's probably the most chaotic moment in football is the second phase of a set piece, because, as you say, like, has the set piece finished? Are we now in possession or out of possession? Or like, are we coming up or are we staying deep? People attaching to their man, or are they coming up as a like there's so much potential for error in those situations. It's absolute chaos. So personally, as someone that tries to organise set pieces, I see that as further organisation that needs to happen. So pretty much, and if the ball's gone back into the opposition half, so we've defended the corner, it's gone back into the opposition half, I think it's probably done. If it's gone out to the edge of the box, edge of the attacking third, certainly if it's delivered straight back in, 100%, that's still part of the set piece. Listen, it's never part of, or it's rarely, I should say, part of the routine or the plan. But you need, as I said, organisation, or at least principles of how you're going to attack or defend second phases. Because again, whether the goal comes directly from corner coming in and the header, or if it's a second, third phase, it still counts as one. So if you're going to apply so much organisation to the first part of it, well, you've got to see your job through. You've got. I'm going to steal a quote from Kobe Bryant. You rest at the end, not in the middle. So you can't stop until that phase of play is finished. So ball's gone out of play, we've regained possession, or it's gone at the end of the pitch. For me, that's when it's done.
Yeah, definitely. And like, as I mentioned to you kind of before we start recording that, but most people know actually anyway, like I support Sunderland, so League One has kind of been a big interest to me, unfortunately, the last few years. So and there's lots of big teams in there of, you know, flying these corners in, and then, you know, the second phase is like, say, balls coming flying straight back into the box. So it's there's lots of different things to defend, and again, being organised on them second, third phases is very, very important. So just curious now, Andy, just to kind of get into, so, you know, after the game, you get into work on a Monday morning. What are you doing? Are you working a few games ahead in terms of who you're playing? Are you spending like a certain day looking at corners and then moving on to free kicks? How do you kind of manage your workload really in terms of what you actually do?
So when I first started, I always tried to work at least one game in advance. I was on a match day, I was up in the gantry, and I would radio down to the bench anything that I saw from a set piece perspective, or even a general perspective, to be honest. I then moved from upstairs down to the dugout and used to get up for every attacking or defensive set piece, because I don't want to say I designed them, but essentially they're generally my ideas. The attacking ones, and the organisation ultimately is my responsibility. So there's not really anyone better placed when those things are happening to orchestrate or direct anything that I see, because there might be something that I haven't necessarily gone through in depth in training, but something I've seen on the video before that the opposition have done once in the past 7 or 8 games, but it's nothing big, and I see that starting to happen. Or if no one else has seen it, I need to be the one so I moved down to the dugout. The issue I had with working 1 or 2 games in advance then is, let's say we're playing Sunderland, for example, I'm looking at Sunderland taking a corner, and I'm thinking, right, I know we've got to be aware of Stewart. for example, is probably the main man. Got the two centre backs. Door's not bad in the air as well, but he's young. I'm thinking, because I'm a game in advance, of my next opponent's names as well. So I would sometimes get a bit confused, and I'd be thinking, right, instead of talking about Stuart, I'm talking about Smith at Rotherham instead. And I know what sort of movement Smith makes because I've already done that prep, and that's probably the most recent prep I've done because I did Sunderland before that. So I realised then, no, I've got to be one game at a time, and it means cramming more into less time, but that's fine because it means when I stand up to help basically in a game, there's nothing else in my mind than this moment, this team. So that I sort of evolved into that, and that was absolutely the right way to do it. In terms of the workload during the week, depends on the week we have. If we're Saturday, Tuesday, or if we're Saturday. As you'll know, the fixture list in League One's a joke. It's like League One, Papa John's, Carabao Cup, FA Cup. It's so much football. So a Saturday is, it's almost like a holiday. Not having to be just constantly all the time at the training ground. So I would normally do, if we're Saturday, Tuesday, I'm working on Sunday. I'm not in, but I'm working on Sunday. So I'm reviewing the Saturday game, the previous one, just what went well, what should have been better, anything that I've seen that I like, that I want to take from the opposition, anything that was weak in us that I need to make sure we address and improve. Then I'll make a start on the opposition. I always start defensively. So I'll always, first and foremost, look at how we stop the opponent. Just because you only get one chance at a clean sheet. So if I make sure we don't concede from a set piece, and the team and the coaches make sure we don't concede in general play, we can't lose the game. So first and foremost, I'll make sure we're set defensively. I know everything about the opponent, individually and collectively. I know what they're going to look to try and do. Also, in the knowledge, they might come up with a brand new routine. That happens, and they do something you've never seen before. We do it as well. So it's always making sure the players, this is what they've done so far, but be prepared that they might do something different as well. And you just have to respond to that. So I'll look at how to stop the opponent first: corners, free kicks, long throw, and if there's any sort of clever throws they do in other areas of the pitch. So some teams are quite bright. Pompey, for example, have some clever throws where they look to try and switch play. Other teams will just go straight up the line. It's a bit more straightforward. And then after that, I'll look from an attacking perspective how we're going to hurt the opponent based on their structure, based on their individuals, where I think weaknesses are that we can try and exploit.
Because I mean, even like, it's so hard to classify. Like a wide free kick can be so many things. Like it could be in swinger and out swinger. It could be from like the byline. It could be further out. So there's so many different things, and each one probably does look different. But no, that's really interesting. And so in terms of then your work's kind of done. So in terms of like on a match day then, so are you then just basically just reiterating kind of what you've probably done in the session beforehand, and just making sure the players know their roles when a set piece occurs? And then obviously you've mentioned you're in the dugout now, so you're there when set pieces kind of are given, and you can kind of give instructions where you see fit.
I think on a match day, they don't try to, well, certainly I don't try to change anything. We try and keep it as consistent as we can, but also as simple as we can as well. So again, this is one of the key things that I learned in the role quite early on, is simplicity is the optimum. Because I wanted new routines for every game. I wanted 3 new routines for every game, so the opposition could never work us out. But again, Saturday, Tuesday, it's almost impossible. Not impossible, but almost impossible to come up with, design, implement, teach 3 new routines per game. Bear in mind, the players also have their recovery from the previous game, their prep for the next game, their roles in possession, out possession, transition, and then I want to throw 3 new set piece routines as well. And that's just to attack. We've then got to look at the defense. It's too much. So I've tried to work off principles instead. So they shouldn't change too much game to game. We might just tweak specifics. It's the only thing that would be new on a game day would be who they're going to pick up, who they're marking from defensive corners or long throws, for example. But I would try to give an indication of who it's likely to be the day before. If the team are fairly consistent with who they pick and who goes up for corners, that's not too difficult. You get some teams that just chop and change all the time. That becomes a lot more difficult. So on a match day, I would just try to give reminders, make sure there's clarity, simplicity. And then the good thing about being in the dugout as well is because football's never perfect, it never follows the exact script that you plan it to.
No.
Things change during the game, so I might see an opportunity during the game where I can address it. Either if a player goes down injured and we can get the lads over for a chat, I can say, by the way, your man's doing this, or there's a weakness here. You could try and exploit that on the next one, right? Next corner, we'll do this. Or you can do that at half time or whatever. So that being on the bench gives me the opportunity to have that interaction with the players during the game and try and affect it in real time, rather than radioing it down and it becoming secondhand information from the assistant coach going across instead. So it would just be just making sure everything's sort of in order. Essentially, I'm sort of I just take set pieces completely out of the manager's mind. And obviously it can't be completely because he's still there watching them and seeing them. So he might see danger and say, like, what are we doing about this? Or have you seen this or something like that? Because although it's my job, I'm not perfect at it. There'll be other things going on as well that someone else might see. I think, okay, no, you're spot on. Actually, we need to address that as well. So I'll try and take away as much as possible and just make sure that I've got that in order.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that obviously, like you said, taking that stress away almost from the manager, because obviously they've got a lot on to do themselves. But I think it's good that the manager is then willing to trust. He obviously trusts your opinion and he's happy for you to go away and do that. But I think there probably will be times when something happens, you concede from a set piece and it's never, you've never seen it before. You probably get some stick for that as well. It's like, well, they've never done that before. It's a brand new thing. But just kind of going back to, you mentioned in an ideal world, you kind of want different set plays, attacking set plays for, but it's probably not practical. I mean, do you just kind of, when you get some time, do you think, do you have almost like a bank of attacking corners that you can kind of pick and choose and alter from? Do you ever sit down and maybe think, actually, I'm going to design a new corner strategy or whatever? Do you do things like that, or would you like to do things like that?
Yeah, do things like that. So we'll have stock corners, really, so stock ideas. The issue is teams analyse you to death.
Yeah.
So we had a situation earlier in the season around about October time. This was the time when we were top scorers in the country from set pieces. The opposition did so much analysis on us that on one of the corners, my centre back was telling me this: our taker's put his hand up to signal, and one of their players has called out to their team exactly what's going to happen. He's going to block for him. They're going to go near post, move across or something like that. And it was just exact. And I remember seeing something on the video as well when we were setting up for a wide free kick. And again, we've given the signal when it was one to sort of hang up to the back post. And I saw the player at the back of their line, the furthest back player of their line, signaling everyone to come across to his, because that's where the ball's going to end up. So realised we had to be fresher. So I sort of went from one extreme to the other, from 3 new routines per game to the stock ideas, and then realised that, no, we're going to need to freshen things up fairly regularly while keeping, I guess, a strand of consistency through it as well, so the players don't get too confused. So I'll have a bank of ideas and principles, and then, as I mentioned earlier, we'll tweak specifics maybe based on the opponent. So playing again in League One, different to playing against Accrington. Accrington don't have any direct play, whereas Lincoln are more of a possession-based team, so they have smaller players in their team. So there are certain corner types. So some teams are very fond of a swarm corner, where they just swarm the goal line and in-swing it to try and score, basically. Against Accrington, no point, because it's going to land on their head first. Against Lincoln, you might have a chance of that one. Providing you block the goalkeeper, you might have a chance. So, we'll have a sort of a bank of ideas, and then we'll try and attribute them to the right opponent where possible.
Because going back to some of the stuff you popped out on LinkedIn that we were speaking about earlier, is it that Wimbledon were basically third in the table for percentage of goals scored by set plays, which technically you're not really known as a big team that's going to rely on set plays. So I'm sure from a personal, I know it's obviously not been the greatest of seasons and in terms of what's happened in relegation and stuff, but I think from a personal perspective, it's something that I'm sure you're probably proud of. Like, you've kind of almost done your job, and you must be happy with the stats that kind of show that you are having an effect. Yeah,
it's, as you said, it's bittersweet, really. So I'm very pleased with where we are from set pieces from where we were. As I said, well, as you mentioned, we're not the biggest of sides. So we're Ben Hennigan at centre back, who's tall, and we have Will Nightingale, who's good in the air. We had Ollie Palmer earlier in the season, who's big, but he went to Wrexham. And we have Jack Rodoni, who is tall, but he's very skinny and he's very young. So He's not like a Sam Vokes at Wycombe, for example, who will just bulldoze people out the way. Other than that, we're sort of 5'9", 5'10", all over the pitch. So we're not a team you'd look at and think, oh wow, you've got to be solid from set piece against these. So we have to use strategy rather than just brute force, really. So yeah, that was not validation, but it suggested that what we're trying to do from set pieces was definitely going in the right direction. It also shows that we probably didn't score enough goals from other means, and ultimately perhaps why we got relegated, as well as the amount of goals we've conceded as well. So it's bittersweet. I was very pleased in terms of my contribution. I'd still like more. I wonder if we had managed to be even more deadly from set pieces, would it have been enough to keep us in the league? So I have to look at that as well. So yeah, just third best in the league in terms of conversion. Had we been second best, maybe that'd have been enough. I don't know. So I've got to look at that in terms of where we can improve as well. But also defensively, so I don't know if I put this on LinkedIn or not, but that proportion ratio defensively, we were top for goals conceded, as in top in a good sense. Defensive set piece goals conceded were the least. Ours was the least percentage relative to the amount of goals. So we were 17% goals conceded from set pieces, which is. I'm pleased we were first in that. Again, I would have liked 0% to have been from set pieces, but obviously it's not a perfect world. But in the grand scheme of things, ultimately the season itself was not good enough. I can look at my own individual performance and say, I'm pleased with a lot of it. I still want it to be better. But yeah, no, it was a difficult season overall as well. Yeah,
no, definitely. And just kind of touching on the kind of other staff that you work with. Obviously, you mentioned you're on the dugout and stuff. You've obviously you've got communication with the manager and stuff. In terms of I would presume you're going to have a lot to kind of do with the goalkeeper coach as well, in terms of defending set plays and stuff. Is that kind of a working relationship that you do kind of have and spend a lot of time with?
I've got a great relationship with the goalkeeper coach, and yeah, it's something that goalkeeper coaches usually take control of, is the defensive set pieces. And that was the case at Wimbledon before I came in. And obviously as set piece coach, I'm going to take that, which our goalkeeper coach Bezo was really pleased with, because it meant he could spend the game just focus on the goalkeeper, which ultimately is what he's meant to be doing. I never really understood why goalkeeper coaches take the defensive set pieces, unless they're particularly good at them. But it just sort of seems like it's to sort of palm it off to the keeper coach, and then when we concede one, well, that's someone to blame. Whereas if the manager takes just the attacking ones, well, we score a goal, I'll take the credit for that. But I work closely with Beza, but I'll take full responsibility and control for what it is that we do. So I'll do all of the prep. I will then have a meeting with Bezo and the goalkeepers, so the starting keeper and the sub keeper, and if we have a third choice, then third choice as well. We'll have a meeting on a Friday morning or a Monday morning if it's a Tuesday game, where I'll go through clips of the opposition, what to expect, and Bezo will give his input as well. Just sort of like a preview for the game. So I work closely with him. I work closely with a lot of the staff. So when Robbo was in charge, we had a great sort of camaraderie among the staff. And although I'm taking control and responsibility for the set pieces, it's good to get other perspectives as well, other opinions as well. So I'll say, I'm thinking of this, I'm thinking of doing this throw in, I'm thinking of changing this role for a corner. What do you reckon? And it would just be good to get some dialogue, really. I really like debate, confrontation, that sort of thing. So disagreement, because ultimately we get to a better solution. So I always wanted that, and I like to give that to the other staff as well. So if they're even if they're talking about pressing or something like that, I'll always try and throw challenges in to see how solid the plan is, I guess. And I like that to come back to me as well. So people challenge me. So working relationship with the staff was really good. When Robbo unfortunately lost his job in March, maybe April, the new manager assistant came in. They pretty much just wanted, you do set pieces. We'll leave that with you, and we'll do this over here. So essentially, just worked on my own from that point, and then just sort of live and die by what happens.
So in terms of so just moving on to the next question, I want to ask you really is the pros and cons. So what do you like the most about what you do, and what's? Cause I know you, in terms of League One, you mentioned the Tuesday, Saturday is pretty much every week. So there's a lot of games to do. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of traveling to do as well. So that seems to be one thing that when I speak to analysts in terms of the negatives, it's the work-life balance, and you've got to obviously put in a lot of hours, you've got to travel a lot. What would you say is your best things and your maybe worst things about the role that you do?
Best things, I think, just to compete.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned earlier, my personality has always been better suited to older players, and that's because I'm an extremely competitive nature.
Yeah.
So being in first team football suits me from that, and that's what I love about my work, is that every bit of prep I'm doing, every corner, free kick that I watch and analyze, I'm doing to try to reach an outcome. I'm doing it to try and win the game, basically.
Yeah.
And I like it because I see set pieces as their own game within a game.
Yeah.
And I kind of see it as my own individual battle with whoever does theirs.
Yeah.
Can I outsmart you? And
Yeah.
I just really like that. That battle, so that competitive side of it is probably my favourite thing. Working at a senior level. I mean, there's a lot of pros. I mean, I'm working in professional football. I go in every day to work around, talk about, and experience football. There's a lot of upside to it.
Yeah.
In terms of cons, yeah, there's a lot of travel, but that going into it, like if that's going to be a major issue for you, don't do it. Don't get into senior football. And it's not so much the overnights at the weekends. It's more like the Tuesday nights when you're away at Rotherham or you're away at wherever, and you've got a 4.5 hour journey. And by the way, you're going away to Rotherham, you're not coming out with any points. You're getting battered for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Physically, emotion, just everything.
Yeah.
And then you've got to do the 4 hour journey home on the coach, having just been beaten 3-0, conceded 2 from set pieces. That's the downside. Getting in at 4 a.m, then getting up the next day. It's your day off, but because you've got in at 4 a.m, you're not getting up until sort of 9-10 o'clock, and then you've got to review the game from before, prep the next one. So that can be quite challenging. So yeah, that work-life balance. My wife gave birth to a little girl early in the season as well. So again, sort of managing that, and sort of, I used to be at work from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. Like, I do my work during the day, stay and do more, go to the gym, then I'll come home after that. After my little girl arrived, you're sort of looking at your watch thinking, I might skip the gym today. I'm going to go home and get off and spend a bit of time there instead. So getting that balance is difficult. I think the nature of football can be challenging as well. The way in which it's seen as it's a lot more binary than it ever used to be. I think either you win or you don't. Yeah. And you are held up and held accountable, which is never an issue, but it's just the way things are seen. You're either in that camp or you're in that camp. So you might play brilliantly, but lose 1-0, or you've lost. And people don't see nowadays that sort of process to things. There's no time to build anything. Things don't really happen overnight, but they're expected to happen overnight. And that can be challenging. So I was quite fortunate when I got the job that there were no fans in the stadium. We played behind closed doors because we didn't score from a set piece for about 12 games. And I can guarantee, because it's a role that is always greeted with skepticism and intrigue at sort of an equal balance. But as soon as the first corner doesn't beat the first man, it's, well, this hasn't worked. And you think, hang on, like, give it a bit of time. We're not going to get it perfect straight away. We haven't intended to hit the first man from a corner. We're probably going for the near post, and we just underhit it. It happens. But with no fans in the stadium that season, it took a bit of pressure away. I'm not on social media other than LinkedIn, so I don't see any of the comments and stuff that goes on. So that gave me a bit of time to build. And once we did start to get, as I mentioned, we went from 23rd out of 23 to number 1 in the country. It did take a bit of time. So I think that's probably a challenge, is dealing with the binary. You've either won or you lost, or you've either succeeded or you failed. And recognizing that football's not perfect, and footballers are humans and they make mistakes. That's always a chat. If football was played by robots, I think Bielsa said this actually, we'd score from every set piece, because I guarantee every plan is perfect. But unfortunately, in execution, it's not always. It's impossible for it to work out that way. There's always an opposition team trying to stop what you're doing. So that's probably been one of the cons, is that win or don't type thing. But it's part of the game.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Rotherham away. We lost 5-1 at Rotherham away. That was a bad day. Going off topic, it just actually come to me. I can remember when, Rory Delap, when he was the long throws at Stoke. We played against them with Sunderland, and I just remember, like, we wouldn't, like, teams didn't want to give it. They would rather give a corner, like
Yeah.
they wouldn't give a throw-in away, because like
Yeah.
anywhere in the half he would reach the box. Like, and the thing was, he never did a long throw when he played for Sunderland either. Like, he played for us before and he never once did a long throw. So, but yeah, it was so effective at the time. So so I'm just going through what I've got down here, Andy, really. So you mentioned, obviously, there's a lot of hours and travel and stuff. In terms of, if you were, let's say you're speaking to a room full of kind of students, or, you know, the coaches, they're really interested in what you do, basically just a bit of advice in terms of what would you say to them if they wanted to potentially go down a similar path to you and be a set piece coach or be part of a first team coaching setup, really?
I'll give 3. First one is to obviously put the work in. You it's difficult for me to say you're not just going to be given the opportunity, because I sort of was given the opportunity, but it was given to me prior to having put in a lot of work around the role. But put the work in, and that's what I don't mean by that is taking a picture of yourself by your laptop, analysing a game, and then putting it on social media saying, like, talking about it. Don't talk about it, just do it. Just do the work. Put in the hours. So I'll get up at either 4 or 5 in the morning each day, and I'll try and get in a couple of hours of work and study before I go to work, or at the moment, because we're off, before my daughter gets up. I'll try and get as much in as I can do, so that I know I'm ticking over, I'm doing as much as I possibly can. The first thing is put the work in. The second one sort of ties in, and it's around standards. So hold yourself to the highest accountable standards you can, and they can't be dictated by your environment. So I mentioned Brentford earlier as the most elite environment I've ever been part of. That was my first experience of elite football in an academy environment. So I was very fortunate, as that was my experience. That became sort of my base level. And then I went to other clubs, and it wasn't quite the same. If I then drop my standards to fit in with the new base, I'm not working anywhere near as well as I could do, or anywhere near as hard as I could do. So set your standards as high as you possibly can, and make sure they remain at that level, regardless of where you are. And if you can push them even further, push them even further. So that'd be the second one. So that ties in with putting the work in, because when you're putting that work in and it's dark outside and it's horrible and you don't really want to get up and do it, it's making sure you're not just doing it to tick the box. You're tying it in with your standards of, I'm not just doing the work, but I'm doing it to this level every day, as often as you possibly can. And the third one would be around honesty. So I mentioned earlier, I like confrontation, I like challenging people, and I like to be challenged, be confronted over things, and have debates. The more honest you are, the better outcome you're going to get. Not necessarily short term. So one of the clubs that I mentioned, Watford, I was let go from Watford because I was very honest about what I thought about things. And I wasn't in a position, in a senior position, where that sort of that sort of feedback was necessarily wanted. I was a head coach or an assistant coach, feeding it up the chain, saying, I think this can be better, I think that can be better. And it was sort of it was an environment where, if you're not part of the full-time staff or senior staff, don't worry about it, just do what we tell you. It doesn't really fit in with my personality. So they basically, the end of the season came and said, you're not working how we want you to work, see you later. Okay, no problem. But that then allowed me to go into a new club, Wimbledon, where I could be still myself, completely honest. And that's an environment where it was very much appreciated, it challenged. And that's ultimately where I ended up getting my break as a result. So I personally think honesty is not going to please everyone, but all you're doing is speaking your mind and speaking the truth, or speaking what you feel, as long as you do it in the right way, and you're doing it in, like, with the best of intentions. Personally, I think it's the best way to go. So I'll go back to Brentford. We used to sit down for an hour after training sessions in the coach's room, and we just rip each other's sessions apart. So we just challenge every little detail, how the codes were put out, how quickly the teams were given out, the outcomes of sessions, the design of sessions, the size, just anything that we needed to, every little detail. And it didn't matter if the session was 99% right, we would hammer the 1%. Because you go away from that session feeling down about it, even though you know you'd had a good session, feeling down about it, but you come back to the next one, and I guarantee that 1% is right. I guarantee it, because people have been honest with you. But you'd have seen it before. Like, you go on coaching courses and you put on a session, you say to the other candidates, oh, what did you think? Everyone goes, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was excellent. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's nonsense because no one ever coaches their best on a coaching course because they've got too much on their mind. They're too worried about what other people thinking. Normally the sessions are diabolical, but people don't want to be honest. They don't want to put themselves out and say, actually, no, I thought this was off. I thought that was off. You could have done it like that. Could have done it like that. It's just better for everyone if everyone's just honest. So that'd be my three things. Your standards, put the work in and be honest.
To be fair, yeah, I mean, you can relate them to anything in life. Yeah, definitely. So do you have any, and again, everyone's different, I don't know if you do you have any recommendations for any coaching, maybe book? Do you read books? Do you like to read books? Do you have any podcasts you listen to? Anything you want to give a shout out that you found useful that maybe other people might find useful?
Yeah, I read a lot. So like I said, I get up early, and when I say put the work in, it's not just studying video. It's so I speak Spanish as well, and I'm learning Portuguese. So it might be, so if I've got between 4 o'clock in the morning and let's say I'm leaving to go to work at 7:30, I've got 3.5 hours there to put in work.
Yeah.
What that looks like is, so that might be an hour of language, an hour of analysis, and an hour and a bit of reading. It might be 2 hours one day of analysis and 1 hour of language. It doesn't really matter, but everything is geared towards making myself better. So I'll read a lot. So in terms of reading resources, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, books. I like a lot of Navy SEAL books. So I've been really into sort of US Navy SEAL stuff. There's one called Guts that I really like, that I read recently. There's your typical ones that everyone's read. Legacy by James Kerr is very good. 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma, that's very good. There's one I really like called Deep Work. I think it's by Cal Newport, and it's about it includes in the title. It's about getting into a state of deep work basically. But when you've got, it's blocking out distractions. And I mentioned earlier, I'm not on social media. That's one of the reasons. Ultimately, it's a massive distraction. The amount of times that I look at people and they're just staring at their phone with their thumb scrolling up and down, they're not actually doing anything. They're just looking at what other people are doing. And if you take that time away that they spend doing that with their thumb and what they could be doing instead, I guarantee you'll make gains. So I think everyone gets the notification each week on their phone of their screen time. So a friend of my wife, his screen time is about 12 hours a day, 50% of his day on his phone. Personally, mine, I strive to be under an hour. So 40 minutes is usually about my time per day. I'm going for a new record this week. I'm trying to get it to under 20. So I barely look to my phone at all, which I can afford to do because I'm in the off season. So, but so take that other guy. So 12 hours a day and I'm doing 40 minutes. So 11 hours and 20 minutes difference off of the phone. Think of what I can do in that time. This is per day, by the way, per day. So we'll forget the 20 minutes, 11 hours per day. So what's that? 77 hours per week. If I'm using those 77 hours productively, and we're both coaches, he's going to get nowhere near me. So it's it's ridiculous when you think about it and you look at the numbers and you do the maths on it. It's like the amount of gains that you can make. And by the way, this guy's not getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to put work in. No, he'll be getting up when his alarm goes off and straight on his phone scrolling. Guarantee it. Just think of the different, and this probably comes back to my sort of competitive nature. I'll compete with people that I don't even know about. I'll create individuals in my head and think, well, if they're getting up at 5, I'm getting up at 4. And if they're putting in this work, I'm putting in that work. And it's just you trying to do as much as you can to separate yourself from other people, I guess. I've gone off on a massive tangent here, but we're talking about books, aren't we? But distractions. So Cal Newport, Deep Work, that's a really good one. Really like that one. Trying to think, I've read loads of books. I like there's a Steve Jobs biography as well by Walter Isaacson, I think it is. I like that one. Just that sort of thing. Then I watch documentaries on. I like people that are obsessed. So Kobe Bryant's a great one, unbelievable. So I'll try and listen to podcasts that he was on, obviously, before he died. Love Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo. He's just an obsessive guy with everything that he looks to try and do. Michael Jordan, obviously, I don't need to advocate The Last Dance. Everyone's seen it probably multiple times. Dr. Dre is a bit of a left field one, but Dr. Dre, I'm banging to like rap and hip hop and always have been. So people like that just obsess over their craft. I think he put out, it was 2, maybe 3 albums in his career. The last one I think was in 2001, and he was meant to do another one that was going to go out, I forget when, but he never finished it because it was never it was never exactly how he wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So just people that obsess over it, I try and sort of follow those sorts of people and study them. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts because I used to drive a lot when I was teaching 5 days a week and then going off to I was in my car all the time. So I used to listen to loads of podcasts, but this was about 4 or 5 years ago. Don't listen to anywhere near as many now. I listen to the High Performance podcast, the Jake Humphrey one when I can, if it's someone of interest. And I've got to be careful with that because sometimes I've listened to ones where I think this isn't really going to be of interest to me, and they've actually been really good ones. But the ones like the one with Johnny Wilkinson was excellent. The one with Dan Carter was excellent. There's one with a nutritionist. She's a doctor as well, which was unbelievable. Like completely changed my diet and the way I look at that sort of thing as well. Anything you can. I just always think if you've got a spare hour or something, use the hour. And this is something my wife said the other day. Actually, so we got married a few weeks ago, and we went on a spa break afterwards, and we had half an hour. We were at Champneys at Spa before a match, and she wanted to go and play tennis, get the rackets, get the balls, walk over to the courts, play the game, take the rackets and balls back, and then we're going to go for our massage. We haven't got enough time. And she said something she'd learned since we'd had our baby is that when you get like a spare 30 minutes, there's so much you can get done. So, all right, we'll go along. But she was spot on. I mean, we were horrendous at tennis, absolutely minging. But we got a couple of games in, and I was really glad that we did it. And that's something that I've really learned is when you doesn't matter how much time it is, see what you can do with it. And sometimes, by the way, that might be nothing. That might be resting and recovering and sort of resetting. It might be watching rubbish on TV because it's something you enjoy and it allows you to laugh and release and that sort of thing. But do things consciously. Don't just sit there looking at your phone. Don't just watch something. Do things consciously to help you. Very long way of answering the question, but hopefully it's of use.
No, it's interesting. A lot of things you said is basically resonates with me. And I think in terms of if you're a coach and you're reading books, some of the books you mentioned there, it's not you don't have to just read coaching. There's books on successful people in totally different sectors that you can learn from. Like you said, obviously the Navy SEAL books you mentioned, obviously even Steve Jobs, like obviously businessmen and stuff. There's things that they apply to their days that you can obviously learn from and apply to yourself. So
I hadn't thought of that. I didn't mention any football books. I think the only football person I mentioned was Ronaldo actually. But no, you're right. When I was much younger and earlier in my coaching journey, I did read. I'd like to read like tactical blogs and articles and tactical books, and that never really did it for me. In fact, the only time it became of real interest to me is when I started doing it. So when I started writing tactical analysis for Coach's Voice, that's when I learned quickly and in much more detail because I'm the one doing it. I don't know if that will work for everyone. Some people probably do learn really well off of just reading books and that sort of thing. But I found that watching games, analysing games, that sort of thing, that's where my learning came. And then, by the way, trying to implement what I'd learned at the time, because I was working with younger players in an age-specific manner, to, I guess, test it out a little bit and see if I could bring that to the table. I think as well as doing sort of the reading list podcast, study football as much as you can study football. If football is a sport that you're focusing on. Yeah,
perfect. And more of a selfish question here, Andy. You mentioned you speak Spanish. I didn't know you speak Spanish, and you're learning Portuguese. What's your kind of what's your method of learning a new language? What do you have any tools that you go-to tools, or how do you find what works best for you?
It's a really difficult one. So I started learning Spanish when it was actually in a summer at university. I woke up and I had nothing to do. And I thought I was always quite good at French at school, but didn't really pursue it beyond school. And I thought I'm going to learn language. So I went on YouTube and started watching videos of like basics in Spanish, writing things down. Go downstairs. I was living at home at the time, and got my sister to test me and everything, regurgitate that sort of stuff. Then when I went back to uni, I enrolled in some classes. They did them free. And again, this is ridiculous because at university, they offered free language classes in probably about 12, 13, 14 different languages, free for the students to go to 3 hours once a week. And the classes were so quiet, as in people wouldn't, and I still to this day, I cannot understand why not no one, because some people did, why so few people took advantage. And people would always say, I don't have the time. You've got the time. You can. I guarantee you can make the time. If you make the time to go out 3 times a week because you're at uni, you can make the time for this to improve yourself. So I did that. but I did that off of the back of what I've been doing, like myself, just learning like online, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Then when I graduated, I bought Rosetta Stone, the software for my laptop, which was good. It's not perfect, but it was good. It increased my vocabulary. Then I would try just as many different methods as I can. So I'd listen to Spanish radio, I'd listen to Spanish podcasts, I'd read Spanish books, which takes a very, very long time because you don't know all the words. So you'd read a page, and a page would take you about 10 minutes because there'll be so many different words, whether it's that you think, well, I know that word, but that doesn't make sense in this sentence. And you think of the English language, we have words that are the same word but mean different things. So you then have to go and find out the other meaning of that word. So that took quite a long time. I don't think I've ever actually finished a book in Spanish, by the way, because you get, and this is to my detriment. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure I finish the Spanish book. So I try and do that. Then I would go abroad to Spain or to Spanish-speaking countries. So I'd always when me and the missus would look to go on holiday, I would try and sort of drop in a Spanish-speaking country so that we could have a great holiday, but I can also practice a little bit. So our first holiday together was to Lanzarote, and I just speak Spanish all the time, which is brilliant. It got a little bit hairy because it was all inclusive, so it got a little bit hairy later on in the night when I'm trying to remember how to do it. But I actually found out I got better when I'd had a few, because you've got no inhibitions. You're not thinking, you're just doing. And then, by the way, when I say I speak Spanish, I'm still learning now. So my daughter, I want my daughter to be bilingual. So she's 14 weeks, so she's obviously not speaking, but we put things on YouTube. We put nursery rhymes on YouTube. Like my sister-in-law and brother-in-law do that with our niece and nephew. They always had it on just in the background, YouTube in English. And I thought, I'm gonna do it in Spanish. So we have all the general sort of nursery rhymes. They're just on a loop in our lounge all the time. So when we've got our daughter and that sort of thing, so I know all the nursery rhymes in Spanish now as well. My missus is picking up, so she speaks it a little bit, but he's picking up little things here and there. So when they do head, shoulders, knees, and toes, it's a brilliant way of learning parts of the body. It's so much better than just reading a book and just remember, okay, cabeza, hombros. Like it's a much better way to do it in song because you remember it. And my daughter's at an age, I spoke with our doctor about this. They just learn a large vocabulary, and then over time we'll sort of apportion it to which language it is. It's incredible how it works. So I want her to, but I'm still learning sort of along with her as well. And I was trying to speak to her as much as I can in Spanish. So again, this is a very long-winded way of saying loads of different methods of learning. There's not been one sole thing, but if I could say the best way is speaking it with Spanish people. To sit there and do it by yourself is fine. But I guarantee you'll have all your vocabulary, you'll know the grammar, you know the tenses, you'll go out there, they speak 100 miles an hour, you think, wait, what? And it's so, like, I've been caught uncomfortable so many times when I think, well, I can speak Spanish, like, I'll handle this, and I'll speak, and then I respond, I think, I don't know what you said. I picked up the odd word here and there. So actually being in that environment, and I spent a week out with Rayo Vallecano, 2018, I think it was, just connected with a guy on LinkedIn, actually, with some Spanish family in Madrid. We just spoke Spanish, and I accelerated to a crazy level that week. By the end of the week, I was in the office with the first team manager, first team coach and staff, and we're just speaking Spanish the whole time. And because there's no escape, there's no, and the lad that I was connected with didn't speak any English, so it's not as if I could say, sorry, what does that mean in English? He didn't know. So getting it sort of out of that comfort zone was a great way. And with Portuguese, I'm trying to sort of do the same thing, but having just had a kid, I'm not able to dedicate as much time at the moment as I'd like to, but I need to find the time to be able to do that, and get into more of a routine. But yeah, just a variety of different ways. But it takes a long time to learn it. It doesn't take a lot of time to forget it. So it's not just starting it, it's maintaining it as well.
Is any Spanish players at Wimbledon? Or? No.
Unfortunately, no. I wish there were. That's what's interesting is there's a couple of players that can speak Spanish, so I'll speak Spanish with them on occasions. And there's one of the other coaches is learning Spanish, so I'll speak with him occasionally. I would love for there to be a few Spanish players. I don't think League One is blessed with continental players, really. It doesn't suit the style. But I'd love for that, just because that would just test me out. It would just and really, like, the reason why I'm doing it is the same reason I took the internship in the first place. I wanted, English people are not known for speaking other languages. So again, I'm thinking, what can I do that's going to separate me from other people? Well, if I can speak this and I can speak that, straight away, that puts me at a different level to these people that have the same qualification. So that's why I started Spanish in uni. But now I've had a season where my stats, as you've mentioned, have been very good relative to the team's performance. In the future, it may well be that I'm picked up by another club, maybe in the Premier League, maybe in the Championship, where it's a lot more multicultural, and you do have players from various countries. I want to be able to connect with them. I don't want to just go and say speak English, even though we're playing in England. I want to be able to connect with the players, connect with the families, and be able to speak in their own language as much as I can. Because ultimately it will help everything.
No, definitely perfect. No, that's really interesting. It's something that I've always kind of think. I'd love to speak another language, and it's just you kind of called me out really. Like you've always got time to do it. So
you can. And by the way, like there'll be a lot of people that will get Duolingo on their phone and say, "Oh, I'm learning Spanish." You're not. I guarantee what you're doing is you're doing a little bit each day to get that streak up all the time. I've done it myself, and that's the purpose of it. I think that's the dopamine behind it, is they give you that streak just so you keep coming back each day. Because like even if you do a minute, well, I got my streak. You're not learning it. It's an okay way of it, but that's not going to teach you a language. It will get you somewhere, but it won't get you there.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, to be fair, Andy, I've proper enjoyed this conversation. I've gone through basically everything I've got down here. I mean, is there anything you want to kind of? I've got a quick fire round actually, but is there anything you want to maybe bring up that we've not spoke about? Anything at all? Like,
I don't think so. I've had my rant about social media, about phones and all that. I don't think so.
I want this guy who's got 12-hour screen time. I want to know how long he's sleeping for, because it only leaves another.
Exactly. This is my point. But people don't think. They don't think about what they're doing. I promise you, it's a habit. And the reason I know this is because I was certainly never that bad. But I got to a point where when I did have social media, because I haven't always been off it. I used to have Twitter. I have Facebook, but I don't use Facebook. I've never had Instagram. Never seen the point. But Twitter was useful for me earlier in my career for resources and connecting with people. There's a lot of good things about it. I think it's a horrible place. I think it's a toxic place. And I made the decision after I got the first team role that I'm coming off it, because I've been a football fan on Twitter. I know what it's like. I know, like you're a fan. You're emotional. You shoot from the hip. Like it happens. But also not just football, just in general. It's not a great place. And too much time was spent just doing that, just looking to see what are other people saying, what are other people doing. Don't need to do it. So I made a conscious effort, get rid of it, and I wanted to pick up my phone less. Like I promise you, let's say you go, say you go to the bank, and you get there and there's a line, you're queuing. You're at the back of the queue, there's 4 people in front of you. First thing you do is you go to your pocket, you get your phone. It's a habit. And I realised this because I started to just stop taking my phone places. I'd leave it at home. My ideal scenario would be to have a Nokia 3310 and just keep that on me all the time. Problem is, you can't actually. So we have WhatsApp groups at work and that sort of thing. I can't actually function to the best of my job without that. But what I'd like to do is have that Nokia and have my iPhone. Leave my iPhone at home when I'm not working or when I'm somewhere else. Have the Nokia. My parents would have access. My wife would have access. My daughter, when she's old enough, would have access. If they need me in an emergency, call that number. I'd always pick up. But other than that, I'm off the grid. That'd be my ideal scenario, and I'd like to get to that one day. But anyway, so I came off social media and all that and wanted to use my phone less. I'd get to that scenario in the bank, and without thinking, my hand would just go to my pocket. And I'd have to bring myself back and go, no, you don't do that anymore. So that's why I stopped bringing my phone with me, because you can't do that anymore. And I realised just how addicted we are to it. Like it is an addiction. I'll go on the tube or on the train. You look up and down the carriage. No one's looking out the window. No one's talking to anyone. No one's thinking. They're just on their phone. And sometimes you communicate with other people, and that's fine. But a lot of people, and you peek over shoulders every now and then, they're just playing games, or they're scrolling, or they're not doing anything that's massively productive or helpful. I promise you, if you look out the window, like you see some beautiful things first and foremost, but just think, and you might come up with like a brilliant idea. You'll think about things, conversation you've had, things that you could have done better, things you might want to do. Use your imagination, and you'll come up with ideas. And it's just such a more positive way of living, in my opinion. Anyway, some people will get a lot of joy out of just scrolling through, and that's fine. It's not for me, and I think it's a better life about it personally, or with less of it, I should say, with less of it.
Yeah, my best ideas come from either a walk or a shower. If I'm unsure, I'll get a shower and something will come to me, because but it's definitely true. And I mean, I'm similar, to be honest, Andy. I only have socials for the like business, basically. I don't have a personal Instagram, personal Facebook or anything like that. It's not really for me. But so Yeah, I've got a bit of a little quick fire round for you, Andy. Again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to name, there's about 10 different options. So I'm going to name 2 players, some present, some past. You just need to tell me who do you actually support, Andy, by the way? Which is your favourite team?
I'm a Watford fan.
You're a Watford fan.
So this season's been horrendous for me. Watford and Wimbledon, 2 relegations. It's not been fun.
It's not good, is it? Well, let's just say Watford have got unlimited budget and they can bring any of these players back for next season.
Yep.
And quick fire, so I don't know too much thinking about it. So, first one, Patrick Vieira or Roy Keane?
Roy Keane.
Haaland or Lewandowski?
Haaland.
Gerrard, Lampard?
Oh, Gerrard.
Henri, Drogba?
Omri.
Ronaldinho, Zidane?
Zidane.
Kaka or Figo?
Figo.
John Terry, Rio Ferdinand?
Terry.
Neymar, Mbappe?
Mbappe.
And then finally, Wayne Rooney or Harry Kane?
Rooney.
Sound nice. Good answers. Good answers. That's everything from me, Andy. I proper enjoyed this. It's gone off on some tangents on social media and languages and books and stuff, but no, it's been really good. And again, I will kind of say if there's anyone still watching and you're not totally falling asleep, if you have any questions for either myself or Andy, leave them in the comments below. But yeah, thanks again, Andy, for your time. It's been really great speaking to you. But yeah, other than that, enjoy the off season, and yeah, I'm sure you will. Not Saturday, Tuesday for another few weeks. Enjoy the off season and all the best, and obviously I'll catch you with you soon.
Cheers, Chris. Thanks, mate.
Nice one. Take care, Andy.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.